That Americans should be angry over Tuesday's terror attacks is one thing, but for Americans to lash out blindly at other Americans, at any group, in search for scapegoats is something else again, and not in the American tradition. Cynthia Bowers is watching some worrisome developments in the Chicago area. Cynthia?
Dan, as growing evidence points a finger for the blame of the terrorist attacks on militant Muslims, 4 million Arab Americans are bracing for possible retaliation. Authorities around the country said they have already seen an increase in incidents of harassment, vandalism, and violence. A noontime gathering in downtown Chicago was meant to bring relief. But even here, there were signs of growing rage, some directed at the man many believe masterminded the terror attack, Osama bin Laden.
I think that would send a good signal to eradicate him.
For others, their frustration is aimed at the Arab American community in general. In a Chicago suburb, police had to stop a group of rowdy teens as they marched toward a mosque, armed with anger and insults. In nearby Gary, Indiana, a lone gunman fired for real, shooting more than 20 bullets into a gas station owned by a native of Yemen, now an American citizen. Only protective glass saved his life. These incidents and the firebombing of a local mosque have led to an all-out assault to keep the anger from boiling over.
We should never single out anyone because of actions taken abroad or within by one individual or 2 or 3 or 40 individuals. This is uncalled for, this is not America, and this is not what Chicago stands for.
Trauma counselor John Stutzman says the outbursts are an inevitable reaction to a horrible national injury.
When you feel threatened, you're either going to have a fight or a flight response. Typically, that's your first response going to be. So we're not likely to flee, we're likely to think about how we can fight. So we're going to try to figure out who the enemy is.
Many Japanese Americans who were blamed collectively for Pearl Harbor don't want to see that injustice repeated.
As we deal with the tragedies, when you look at those to blame and those that are at fault, it is a process of looking for individuals and what they've done as individuals, not as groups.
Nevertheless, revenge is on many people's minds. Talk radio shows are being peppered with calls from people whose fear has turned to fury.
Here's what I think ought to be done about whoever did this. I think we ought to turn them loose on the streets of Manhattan.
Calls for calm are coming from the highest levels. The president and his cabinet insist Arab Americans and Muslims must be treated with respect. Attacks on innocent people will be considered hate crimes and will be prosecuted as such. Dan?
Cynthia Bowers in Chicago.